Thank you for coming to my presentation today. My presentation is on the longest war in U.S. history. The war I'm referring to is the war on poverty. For over 75 years, America has been fighting to eradicate poverty, yet poverty still exists. In fact, we currently have a new generation of children that are growing up in poverty. Research shows that these children will remain in poverty throughout their adult years. They will have children of their own, and the cycle of poverty will continue. Here's a picture of poverty today. The current estimates of children living in poverty, according to Susan Newman, are 28% overall, and a whopping 42%, almost half, of all minority children are living in poverty. This example also serves to demonstrate that this future generation may very well be doomed to spend the rest of their lives in poverty. The cycle may perpetuate onto the next generation. So in other words, the children of these 22 to 48% of people currently living in poverty today will also be impoverished adults. The cycle will continue, as is indicated by McClintock and Lowe in 2007. So now we need to consider health care and poverty. It almost seems a 2008 study by Irwin proved that poverty can cause poor health, and poor health can cause poverty. Living in poverty makes a doctor's visit a hardship. You need to miss a day's worth of wages. You need to miss work. You need to come up with cash for the doctor's appointment, for the prescriptions. So the tendency is to wait until an illness becomes severe. Now in this case, poverty has caused a severe illness. Now consider a person that is severely ill. No income, you couple this with mounting medical bills, and now you have an individual and a family that is cursed to live their lives in poverty. Janice Probst and cohorts at the University of South Carolina did a study that found that poverty leads to premature death. The loss of a wage earner or a parent leaves children in poverty, and the cycle goes on. In 2010, Muning and a number of public health physicians correlated a number of high-risk factors, including smoking, obesity, binge drinking, poverty, and a lack of high school education. Surprisingly, they found that the top two indicators, or top two out of the top three indicators of ill health in adulthood were poverty and the lack of a high school diploma. So now we've got education, and we see how that works into poverty. Susan Beagle, a PhD, wrote in 2003 about her struggles about growing up in poverty. She says that she grew up in a different culture. She knew that she spoke a different language. She used slang. She had bad grammar. And this is what she had learned at home. This affected her writing ability. Educators pretty much viewed her as being unintelligent. Luckily, one educator took her under his wing and mentored her, and she was able to finish school. Educational reform has been attempted. Susan Newman, as I refer to in my visual aid, was the Assistant Secretary of Elementary and Secondary Education during the time that Bush's No Child Left Behind reforms were enacted. In hindsight, she contends that schools in poor districts were doomed to fail. These schools already had limited resources. In addition, they faced the challenge of educating children with special needs. They had children that came to school that couldn't read because their parents couldn't read. These kids came to school underfed and underclothed for the weather. Many of these kids are dealing with serious mental and physical illnesses at home. Not to mention they may be dealing with these illnesses themselves. As a matter of fact, in 2008, Wadsworth and Associates, they are all child psychologists, they confirmed that childhood poverty directly causes stressors that impedes a child's ability to learn. Again, this predisposes these children to live in poverty as adults. They have children, the pattern of poverty continues. But now, armed with the research that we've gathered over the past 10 plus years, a solution to ending poverty is becoming clearer. Anti-poverty programs need to work in conjunction with targeted health and educational resources that enable individuals to break the cycle of poverty. they can improve the quality of life for themselves and for generations to come, and they can be self-sufficient. Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Why is it taking so long to recognize that health and educational resources are such major parts of the problem in U.S. poverty?
Well, as that McClintock and Lowe study, I referred to them before, that study actually indicated that the way that the government puts out questionnaires, the way that the questions in these questionnaires are framed actually tends to blame individuals for their own plight. Blames them for being in poverty, asks what poverty is like, as opposed to actually asking them what resources they need to bring themselves out of poverty. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't more money given to schools in poor areas?
Well, we referred to Dr. Susan Newman before, who worked with No Child Left Behind. Basically, she shows us that the standards that these poor schools are set up to have to reach are actually standards that have been put in place by these richer schools. So of course they're not going to be able to live up to those same standards. They have a lack of resources, they have special need children, therefore they lose their funding. The government cuts off their funding because their scores don't equate the scores of these richer schools. Is there any more questions?
I have one last one. I have heard the term generational poverty.
Sure.
What exactly is generational poverty?
Well, generational poverty is a term that's been attributed to Ruby Payne. She's a writer, an author, an educator in the field of poverty. What she refers to is that generational poverty has a set of unwritten rules, and there are even symptoms that you can see in children that are growing up in impoverished homes. Her idea is that you need to train educators to deal with these special needs children in order to get people out of poverty and to eradicate poverty as we know it in the U.S. If there's no more questions, I want to thank you very much for your time.